on the couch.
It's one of our my name's Ryan Olson, she, her, and I'm the judicial advocates director for the National Association of Consumer Advocates.
Hey. You're just introducing yourself.
Oh, nice. I'm Aman George from Knoxville.
So we're just going to get behind here. So just going to kick us off.
All right, who's excited to be here? I asked who's excited to be here? Yeah, that's right, that's right. Okay, my name's Sejal Singh. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a labor lawyer. I'm a lawyer for the people. I'm going to be emceeing this protest today. I'm here like all of us because we're lawyers for the people. We stand up in court every damn day for working families, for immigrants, for voters. And we know that today there are two sets of laws in this country. There is one for the wealthy and the powerful, for the people who live and work on Pennsylvania Avenue, and one for the rest of us. That's right. Today, Donald Trump and his billionaire donors are suppressing dissent. They're trampling on free speech. They're engineering the worst attack on unions since Taft-Hartley. They are terrorizing immigrant families, all while funneling tax breaks to themselves, breaking the law every chance they get, and dismantling the only parts of the government that can hold them accountable. Meanwhile, the most powerful corporations, with their support in America, are stealing from their workers, brutally crushing our unions, driving up prices, and our legal system, dominated by judges who are handpicked by billionaires, dominated by special interests, dominated by the Federalist Society, lets them get away with it. And we see that right here. We see this right here in this building. We have a legal system. We have this building that lets Donald Trump racially profile and round up immigrants who have never committed a crime while saying that he has total immunity to commit any crime he wants. Yeah, it is fucking shameful. We have a legal system where this court will block student loan cancellation for the people, but it will let Russ Vogt illegally impound money to feed the hungry. We have a legal system that sees Donald Trump destroying independent agencies that protect us against union busters and predatory lenders and price gouging corporate monopolies, and just signs off on that at the dead of night. And we have a legal system that lets him, that lets them get away with this. And when this system is this corrupt, we as lawyers have a special responsibility to speak out, to stand with the people who are fighting back. And so it is truly my honor today to be introducing many of my heroes, many people who have been living this fight, who have been in the trenches fighting for the people, trying to make this system work, and who are now, here with all of you to defend our democratic values. And so with that, to kick us off, I'm excited to introduce Rachel Rossi, the absolutely incredible president of Alliance for Justice. Rachel, please come up.
Thank you. Equal justice under law. We all know this often cited, very famous quote that is actually inscribed on this building above the East Pediment. But there's another quote inscribed in the Supreme Court that I like that is often overlooked or less cited. It says above the East Pediment of the court, justice, the guardian of liberty. I like this principle because it reminds us what equal justice under law really means and what it's supposed to look like. If the law is used to erode our freedom, that is not justice. If the law is used only to protect the powerful, that is not justice. And if the law's promises depend on where you were born, what you look like, the language you speak, the color of your skin, who you love, or how much money you have in your pocket, that is not justice. And when the law can be ignored by the president of this country, that is the end of justice as we know it. And we are out here today because this Supreme Court has abandoned its duty to safeguard our liberty. It has failed to protect the promise of equal justice under law. In the first 20 weeks of Trump's second term, The administration sought emergency relief 19 times. That's actually more requests than the Biden administration made in over 4 years. And this court sided with Trump nearly every single time. This court has ruled that Trump is immune from punishment for committing crimes. It has weakened its own power and the power of lower courts to hold the executive branch accountable. It has greenlit racial profiling by immigration officials. It has okayed the dismantling of federal agencies, the firing of independent watchdogs, the defunding of scientific research, the elimination of access to food for 42 million people. Clearly unlawful actions by this administration are being rubber stamped for approval by our nation's highest court. This is simply not justice under law. And we're here to say, enough is enough. We, the legal community, we're out here because we still believe in the law. We're out here because we still believe in our democracy. We are out here to demand that this court do its job to safeguard our liberty. We're out here to demand equal justice under the law. We all know that our country was founded to be a people-led government where no one is above the law, and we will not rest until that vision is fulfilled. Because the power of the people remains strong, and we will not be silenced. We will not stand by while our democracy is stolen. So let me ask you, the legal community, to the lawyers, to the law professors, to those who stand for the communities that can't often stand for themselves, those of us who are the voice for the voiceless, will we continue to hold this court accountable? Yes. Will we continue to defend the Constitution? Yes. Will we continue to fight for judges and justices who look like, represent, and rule for the freedom of all people? Yes. Will we continue to fight for reforms to hold our courts to a higher standard? Yes. And will we continue to demand the promise inscribed on this building, a justice that guards our liberty? Yes. Thank you.
Hi, that was amazing. Thank you, Rachel. Although we may have a bunch of billionaire-appointed, Donald Trump-appointed, people who are signing off on his autocracy in this building, we do have many, many champions in the states. So I'm excited to introduce Judge Mukhauser, one of our champions on the Connecticut Supreme Court.
I fear the first thing I should say is I'm a retired judge, because that allows me to be candid. I think I was asked here today because I spent 10 years as a complex litigation judge and really saw things from the inside and walked away with some understandings that I ultimately put into a book about needless complexity in the courts. It's called The Common Flaw. And what I realized and wrote at the beginning of the book about what needless complexity in the courts are is that it's often used as a smokescreen so that we cannot understand the judgments that are actually behind the words that we struggle to read in legal decisions. And so I was thinking about this smokescreen thing, and then it sort of reminded me of this new drapery that's over the Supreme Court. And it seemed to me it was sort of, begging for a metaphor, because this facade of formalism that gets thrown over so many decisions, and that there are decisions without any reasoning at all, so that it's opaque and you can't see through it. So I was trying to think of what this really represents. Is this some sort of Wizard of Oz curtain that's going on up there? Maybe a Berlin Wall against the truth, or is it an iron curtain of indifference? To me, ultimately, I felt it's functioned instead in recent days as a veil of tears for the poor and the powerless. And this veil notion made me think of something else I was working on, is studying the medievalism of this court. And that a veil makes me think of that, and this court makes me think of the medieval philosophers and priests who kept between them and the truth things like their sacred texts. And you see that here with things like the Federalist Papers. They're sacred philosophers, and you see that here also, as in medieval times with Hamilton and Madison and Scalia, the Holy Trinity. Their opinions are too often inward-looking, so that they don't have to look out at the people that they are supposed to serve and they're supposed to connect to in terms of their problems. They are inward-looking. They focus on syllogisms and logic games and grammar games. And until recently, my favorite illustration of this was the Dobbs decision, which of course overturned Roe versus Wade. And if those of you who have read the decision probably struggled to just make any sense of it whatsoever. Now, if Justice Alito had just stepped forward and said what we all know he really thinks, which is he thinks that life begins at conception and therefore there's a life there that has to be defended, that would be, I suppose, a little more intellectually honest. But what we got instead was more of the sacred texts, more of the worrying over the words, and we ended up with an opinion which came around full circle into, frankly, ridiculousness, where the conclusion was that to understand the rights of women today, we have to look at their rights in history and tradition, when we know they didn't have any rights at all. So that's the kind of smokescreen, that's the kind of veil that had been coming from them. And I thought that was a pretty significant illustration of the problem until I read their decision. Until I read the decision of Amy Coney Barrett in the National Institute of Health's cases. That case came from the District Court of Massachusetts, where there's a brilliant jurist, William Young, on the district court, who understood what this NIH suit was about. It was about the power between Congress and the presidency over spending. And he wrote a masterful decision exposing the fact that the president had run roughshod over the most important power of Congress, which is the spending power, tax and spending power. And so what happened when it got to here? I don't know if anybody had read it. It is just mind-bending. It never addressed the subject of the case at all. And instead what we got was the veil, the smokescreen, the Berlin Wall, where they ended up focusing on instead on deciding which court the suit should have been filed in. And 4 of them said it should be in the U.S. Court of Claims, and 4 of them thought it was in the district court. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the deciding voice, said maybe it should be in both or neither. And net result, this smokescreen, this facade of formalism that was in the way of the actual issue in the case, the spending power, won out. And what did that leave? We all know. It left Donald Trump winning the case, but not by them addressing the spending issue, but by dealing with this veil, this curtain of secrecy about what they're really up to. Trump versus Casso is another example of that. There we are, 4 square in front of ourselves with the issue of birthright citizenship in front of the courts, and the lower courts making rulings in which a Reagan-appointed judge said it's the most obvious thing I've ever seen in my life, and it makes it up to here. And again, no ruling on birthright citizenship. We got a ruling instead on nationwide injunctions, a highly technical fight among the justices of exactly how the case should be filed, what kind of pleading should be filed, etc. Again, we've lost sight of what the case is supposed to be about, birthright citizenship. Nome versus Abrego Garcia is another one. That case was a moment in which the Supreme Court could have risen up and struck down the idea that you can pack a bunch of people onto an airplane that you've picked up off the street and throw them into some prison in El Salvador, even though there's a person with an order of a court saying that that must not and cannot be done. The most they would do in the case was to send it back to the lower court and to suggest that they should facilitate his return. And of course, what did that do? It brought us right back to the whole issue of what does facilitate mean? So they missed a tremendous opportunity there. Where have they suggested they might draw the line with the President of the United States? The Federal Reserve and tariffs. Because, of course, we know that the business community is interested in tariffs, and we know that the Federal Reserve is the bedrock of Wall Street. So what have they signaled they might stop him on? Those two things. And that concerned me a great deal, because they're also letting SNAP benefits wait. And we find ourselves with masked men on our streets, picking up women and children and deporting them. We have troops in our cities. We have vicious attacks by the President of the United States on free speech across this country. We have bogus talk of invasions, of emergencies, of terrorists, and we have murder on the high seas. The court is focused on the wrong things in the wrong way. So when will the day of the powerless come? When will the day of the people come to the United States Supreme Court? Let us ask the justices while we're here today to let that day be today. Let us ask them to give justice now, loudly and directly, to stop tyranny now, to defend democracy now, to redeem themselves and the soul of this nation now, while we can still recognize it, while we can still hope for it, while we can still stand here in the street and demand a government of laws and not of men. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will hear from one of my personal heroes, Jess Rutter. Jess is a lifelong champion for working people in and outside the courts, most recently as the Deputy General Counsel of the NLRB.
Thank you so much, Sejal, and thank you all for being here today. It's the work that you all are doing in the courts, in the streets, that is holding the line, and that is so, so important in this moment. So let's give a round of applause to everyone here. Thank you. And I want to talk about solidarity. Solidarity is one of the most, I think, beautiful things that we have as human beings. It is a principle of supporting each other, being there for each other, and each other being there for ourselves, right? And it is the strength that we have as a nation, as a world. And we are very lucky that workers fought really, really hard to put solidarity into law. So we have a National Labor Relations Act. We have labor laws that protect federal workers, that protect state workers. And these labor laws, they protect solidarity. They protect the right of workers to have each other's back in the workplace, to fight for higher wages, to fight for safe workplaces, to fight against discrimination, which we see every day ripping us apart. And so this solidarity principle is so important that we uphold amongst each other, but also in law. And unfortunately, the Trump administration has gone after these laws, has gone after the institutions that protect these rights. And it is so, so important that we stand together and protect these rights. That we ourselves exercise solidarity in the streets and in the courts. That we demand that these courts uphold the laws that we fought to pass. So I want to talk really specifically just about a story that happened to the National Labor Relations Board, which some of you all might know about. So the National Labor Relations Board is an agency with amazing, amazing public servants who work every day to protect workers' rights. And for many, many years now, there have been board members who have served, And for the first time, pretty recently, there was a first black woman who was actually appointed to the NLRB and served as a chair. So what did Trump do when he got into office? Just days after he was inaugurated, he removed that woman, Gwynne Wilcox, from her seat. It was the first time that any board member had ever been removed in the long history of the National Labor Relations Board. But Gwynne Wilcox did not say, okay, I'm gonna go home. She fought it, and she is still fighting it. She challenged it in the courts. She was put back. She was taken out. She was put back. And then these guys took her out again. And so she is now still fighting to come back and to serve on the National Labor Relations Board and to protect our rights as workers. And so it is so important that we stand with Gwynne Wilcox, that we stand with workers who are on strike right now at Starbucks, workers who are organizing in their workplaces, who do not have an agency that can protect them because of Trump and because of these guys. We need to hold them accountable. We need to stand together. We need to show solidarity. So thank you so much. I so appreciate everything, again, that everyone is doing, and so look forward to that solidarity with everyone here. Thank you.
I am now excited to introduce Sophia Montez, an attorney at Project South, where they support grassroots movements, community-led strategies for social and economic justice.
The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters. And we are faced at such a critical juncture of our history where we face two truths. The first one, this monster that we're facing, this thing that is hell-bent on eradicating our species off the face of this earth for a profit. A breakdown of the liberal republic promise of checks and balances and internal accountability, as our institutions are aligning behind what is perhaps the greatest consolidation of anti-human power that we have seen in this current point in time. A monster that is 20 years old, the spawn of the war on terror, of the hyper-surveillance and hyper-militarization of our streets and our communities. A monster that is 40 years old, the spawn of neoliberalism and Ronald Reagan economic policy. This monster is 60 years old, a backlash to our civil rights movement. 150 years old, the spawn of US imperialism of the Americas and the world. A monster that is 400 years old, a spawn of settler colonialism. On the other hand, the second truth that we're faced with is the absolute unshakable certainty that we will overcome. And we must overcome. And you know exactly why. It's the same reason why you're here today. It's because there is someone that you love. There is someone for whose safety you fear today. And you've come here today because you want to know how to protect them. Because everybody here has come embodying the sum put together of everybody who loves you. Your family, your friends, your mentors. And you've brought all of them here with you, and so many of you here today. And that is exactly why we need to fight, because we need to make sure that we're all safe here, that all of our loved ones are well. And so I got two requests for you today. Number one is that I need you to speak with someone here in the crowd that you have never met before. Let's raise this entire constellation of humanity that each of you has brought, and let us interconnect it into a grander constellation of all of us here today. May you meet again in the fight. My second request is when you go back home, and for a lot of y'all that's gonna be right here in DC, some of y'all that's gonna be Atlanta, some of y'all it's gonna be a little no-name town in the middle of nowhere, population 200 and a single broken traffic light. I need you to find those who are fighting to protect our communities, those who are setting up the rapid response networks, those who are unionizing, tenants unions, workers unions, those who are making sure that our parents, our community leaders, our families can come safe back home each night and bring supper to our table. It may be a temple of worship, it may be a third party, it may be some other form of political grassroots organization. And I need you to ask them. I need you to introduce yourself and ask them, as a lawyer, as a law student, as a legal advocate, how can I put my training, my education, my license in service of our movement that we're building here? Because in a moment where top-down governance has not only failed us, but targeted and attacked those whom we love, our very own communities, it is the time for bottom-up governance. It is the time to empower our communities. And as lawyers, as law practitioners, as law students, we have a special privilege that we must submit in service of our people's organizing. Because there ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people don't stop. We got this, y'all.
Thank you, Sophia. Now I'm introducing someone who is fighting for more just courts right here in DC, one of our own community members, Bethany Young of the DC Justice Lab.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here. At the top of this building, an inscription reads, "Equal justice under law." But we are all here today because we know that is not yet reality. Not in the halls of this building, not in cities across the country, and most certainly not on the streets of this city. Not here in our nation's capital, a city where real people live and work and do their best to keep their families and communities safe. Not in this city where 700,000 people lack full representation in the government that makes decisions about their lives. Not in this city, which too often becomes a political stage instead of a home whose residents deserve respect and self-determination. Yes. Exercising the modicum of democracy granted to them, the people of DC elected the DC Council to govern and legislate with their interests at heart. With no voting representation in Congress, the DC Council is the city's only way to influence the laws that shape their lives. Yet this administration and its allies in Congress have exploded any semblance of autonomy and democratic representation by undoing its laws. Laws that have improved public safety, that have advanced fairness in the criminal legal system, that have opened pathways to better, productive lives. That kind of interference is not just political disagreement. It's a warning sign of what happens when those in power choose control over democracy. We are seeing that same pattern nationwide, and the esteemed people who work in this building have been co-opted to advance it, to accelerate it. The Supreme Court has stepped back from its role as a check on executive power. In some cases, it has narrowed rights directly. In others, it has stood by, declining to intervene as constitutional limits were tested. An institution promised to uphold the rule of law has become complicit in its erosion, and the consequences are felt most deeply by the people who already live at the margins. These results are on painfully clear display here in DC. Take the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act, passed by the DC Council that members of Congress now want to repeal. A law that has allowed a brilliant network of returning citizens to flourish, pouring into each other in their communities. These are people who were incarcerated as young people and worked hard to return home better than they left it. If the administration and its allies, including the people in this building, have their way, it won't just erase policy. It erases progress, stability, and opportunity, and threatens a community that has been a testament to redemption and a tremendous resource in DC. Across the country, when constitutional boundaries are ignored or bent, the harms fall first on people who have the least ability to absorb them. People working multiple jobs to keep a roof over their heads. People whose interactions with law enforcement already carry enormous risk. People whose precarious freedoms exist more on paper than in practice. As attorneys, we have been given the special privilege of voice and of access. Our voices carry weight, and with that comes responsibility. We can fight to ensure that changes in the law grow out of the needs and experiences of the people most acutely impacted by them. We can amplify the voices of people who go unheard. And we can choose to be lawyers for the movement, for communities fighting for safety and dignity. I'm an optimist. This work is not hopeless. It couldn't be, or we wouldn't all be here today. History has long and bends towards justice, but only when people insist on bending it. If we persist in telling the truth in the face of distortion, if we make our voices so loud at every opportunity that they cannot ignore us, if we protect and support and cheer each other on in the small ways and in the big ways, a safer, freer, more just city and nation is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. Now we will hear from Alexandra Kurd, who is a defender of civil rights that are under attack here at Lambda Legal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to People's Parity Project for organizing this and bringing us all together, and most importantly, making sure that Black voices and queer voices are here on this stage. My name is Alexandra Kurd. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a staff attorney at Lambda Legal here in our DC office. Lambda is a national organization dedicated to enshrining the rights and full recognition of LGBTQ people and everyone living with HIV. We do this through impact litigation, through public education, through public policy work. And for 50 years, our bread and butter has been fighting for folks behind these doors, for fighting people in courthouses around this country. We've placed so much faith in these courts, in the court system. Much of our movement has. We've had faith that, at least eventually, the courts would come around and the rights and recognitions of everyone would be fully achieved. If we had enough well-researched, grounded, persuasive arguments, they would believe us that we're full people. But as many of us feel the shock of what's going on in the movement, we cannot forget that all of the ways that historically this nation's ideals of true fairness and equity have been proven to be a farce. This is a country that was founded on allegedly democratic principles that has always found an excuse to not follow through and to exclude someone. People who look like me and look like many of us up here were those people who are meant to be excluded, people who come from backgrounds like mine or love like I love. We've always been the exception to that rule. Not meant to have a voice, not meant to have a vote. And I stand here not just as an attorney. I stand here as a queer Black femme attorney with Southern and Midwestern roots. A descendant of people who were made to toll this stolen land, who have harvested things on this stolen land, who were harvested and stolen from other lands and brought here to build the wealth and equity that is this country. I come from a people who literally carved the stone that makes that White House up the road. And so I'm speaking to you as an esteemed member of the bar, much like the rest of you, just like those guys. But the difference is, unlike them, we care about our duties. We care about our responsibilities to the people, to our communities, to the Constitution. Unlike them, I care about ethics. Unlike them, I'm held to a code of ethics. We stand here in front of the same institution that said my people are not citizens, that has argued that giving me the same right to privacy as any other person to be with who I love is a slippery slope to sex crimes being legalized. Boo. This is the same institution that said I should get no say in whether I mother a child. This is the same institution that just last week decided that it's okay that people like me get to marry who we love. That's fine, you can keep it for now. I stand here despite the fact that this Constitution was never meant to protect me, meant to protect many of us. And yet we fight for it because we know that the things that are enshrined in that, despite the many clauses that were meant to be exceptions for me, I know that that Constitution has many rights that are worth protecting, that are worth keeping, that are worth fighting for and sacrificing for. I speak to you again as a queer Black femme attorney, being more than any of those justices of the past thought that I could be. Many of us standing up here being more than any of our ancestors could have dreamt we could be. I stand here fighting for that document. I stand here fighting for all of us. I stand here to implore you as attorneys, especially the young attorneys, especially the law students. We need to listen to our elders. We need to learn from the people who have been living under this fascist occupation their entire lives, for lifetimes before us. There's revolutionary and liberatory scholarship that dates back generations and generations and generations, and we need to study up and look at the things that they wished for and dream even bigger. Look for the things that they had to leave behind because of respectability, and see if we can make those things happen today. It's time for us to dream big. And to that court, and any other court that's capitulating or supporting or just merely letting things happen, I say, we will not stand idly by and allow the erosion of the basic rule of law. We will not be complacent in the authoritarian, fascist reoccupation of our government. We refuse to just let it happen, to hear them out. We see what you're doing, we see the world that you're trying to create, and we say, hell no, we're not doing it. And so I just want to leave you with this. One of the most threatening things you can do to an authoritarian is to have hope and dream of a world without them. To telegraph a country where they are powerless, to build a world and build a future that not only disproves their lies, but build a future where people's needs are met, so they aren't looking for a liar, they aren't looking for someone to blame for their ails. And we can build that. Fight the backslide. Stand up for what's true and good. Do not comply. Do not fight for what we had. Don't go back to what we had. Fight for something better. Fight for your family, for your acquaintances. Hell, fight for your ops. They need it too, right? We're fighting for everyone because we're creating a future for everyone where everyone gets their full recognition, gets their full rights. And so it's time for us to build that world worth living in. It's time for us to fight for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from one of those heroic lawyers who's in the courts every day suing Donald Trump, getting those TROs. Yeah, this is a lawyer's march. We can cheer for TROs. Out here defending healthcare, the environment. Amin George from Democracy Forward.
Hello, DC. My name is Aman George. I'm a Washingtonian, I'm a father, I'm an immigrant, and I'm a lawyer at Democracy Forward. We're a national legal organization that advances democracy and social progress through litigation, through policy, public education, and regulatory engagement. Thank you to all of the lawyers here and any lawyers watching online for being a part of the fight for democracy. Something a law school classmate said a few months ago has stuck with me. This spring, when most major law firms were refusing to show the kind of courage that you all are showing, she posted that without the rule of law, our job turns into being glorified bribe brokers. She was right. This administration is trying to push our profession towards a world where nothing matters except whether Trump and Vance like you. Doesn't matter if you broke the law or who you hurt. If you're willing to do an expensive or a humiliating favor, the government will give you impunity. We can't let that happen. The rule of law was built in this country over centuries, and we built something that is the envy of the world. Trump and Vance want to build a country where the rule of law doesn't matter. Law doesn't matter if it threatens their power. But you can throw a dart at a world map and hit a country like that. America's special because it isn't one of those places. Kids in America don't grow up dreaming of a better life in some dictatorship thousands of miles away. We want to live in a country where Mr. Smith goes to Washington, not falls out a window in Moscow. So lawyers, our country needs us right now. Here are some ideas for how you can help. If you're involved in the legal fight against authoritarianism right now, don't let up. We know that this work is hard, it is grueling, it is scary, and it involves losing sometimes. But it also involves joy and commitment and giving voice to people who need the government to work the most. Your clients and the American people will obviously celebrate when you win. Democracy Forward gets huge outpourings of support when the courts rule for us. But I also know from experience that your clients and the American people will thank you if you lose, for being in their corner, for vindicating their rights, and for being next to them when they decide to stand up to this administration. If you aren't directly involved, in the legal work against this administration, work to maintain the highest standards of our profession. Take on pro bono cases. If your colleagues are becoming bribe brokers, call them out and tell them that they are bringing shame on all of us. Lawyers also need to push outside our comfort zone and talk to people around the country about why the rule of law matters. Pam Bondi's brother discovered earlier this year that if DC lawyers got to choose, our institutions wouldn't elect authoritarians. But DC lawyers don't get to choose most things. And we have to use our skills to educate and to advocate, not just to litigate. Some of the work is going to be remembrance and reminders that things have been and can be better. When I first started at Democracy Forward in 2017, when we were building it, some of the people I work with now were just starting high school. That whole generation of young people have spent their entire adult lives to date watching Trumpism weaken and consume our institutions. Those of us who have been around longer know that it doesn't have to be this way. We know that we have lived in a saner, more functional, even if imperfect world. The rule of law isn't a fairy tale, but it is a commitment. Every day, we see extraordinarily brave people come forward and say, I'm being hurt by what's going on right now, and I'm going to exercise my right to go to court about it. Never in our lifetimes has it been scarier to be a plaintiff against the government than it is right now. But every day, people and organizations decide that they have no choice but to put their fate in the hands of our legal system and in the hands of lawyers like us. So let's keep showing them that we are worthy of their courage. Let's commit to high standards, commit to a legal system that protects everybody, commit to speaking out about what we're seeing in this country, commit to keep fighting for the people who are being harmed by America's backsliding. And maybe, if we're lucky, together we can inspire the folks in that building behind us to stop pretending like America's founders intended to trade one king for another. Thank you, DC.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Ryan Olson of the National Association of Consumer Advocates, where she supports legal professions who are protecting consumers from unfair, abusive, predatory practices.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. As you mentioned, thank you so much. We, our organization, NACA, is an organization of lawyers and experts who have dedicated our lives to one simple premise: that everyone should have equal rights under the law. And every day, our attorneys stand in courtrooms and communities across the country fighting against fraud, deception, and abuse of power. We represent families threatened with the illegal loss of their home and car, elders targeted by scams, and service members cheated by predatory lenders. We rely on the promise that the law matters, the Constitution means something, and most importantly, no one, no matter how powerful, stands above the law. That is why we are here today. We stand this movement because we see the harm firsthand that happens to everyday people when the rich and powerful think that the rules don't apply to them. We fought this battle in courts, so we recognize it when it's playing out the highest levels of our government. We all know this president refuses to play by the rules. When Donald Trump treats laws like suggestions and constitutional limits as an inconvenience, everyday people lose. When our courts enable lawlessness rather than defending the rule of law, we need to speak out. Because, my friends and allies, make no mistake, the wealthiest men in the world did not fund Trump's inauguration and ballroom for their love of history and architecture. They are making a strategic investment in Trump's goodwill that is paying significant returns. Corporations that were being investigated or sued by the government collectively gave $50 million to Trump's inauguration fund. And now, those enforcement agencies have been gutted, lawsuits and investigations have been dropped, and people are getting off scot-free. The CFPB was created in 2008 and has returned over $21 billion to consumers that were defrauded, and it's being illegally gutted as we speak. And that's not the only corporate watchdog being taken off the beat. The Federal Trade Commission is being stripped of its independent leadership, leaving it vulnerable to outside influence, and the Consumer Protection Division of the Department of Justice has also been dismantled. This isn't just bureaucratic reshuffling, it is the intentional destruction of the government's ability to protect people from being exploited. And while this is happening for vitally important agencies, Trump is packing the court with extremist judges. These aren't just conservatives. They are ideologues chosen for their willingness to place power over people, corporations over consumers, and loyalty to one person over the law. And this Supreme Court, meant to provide the ultimate check on executive overreach, has become an enabler. Time after time, it's sided with this Trump administration, while the district courts are siding against Trump about 3 out of 5 times. This court has delivered a 90% success rate, often through a shadow docket with limited reasoning and limited explanation. The pattern's unmistakable. What Trump wants something, this court finds a way to make it happen. And that is not how courts are supposed to work in our democracy. When the CFPB can't investigate, the FTC can't enforce, the DOJ won't prosecute, and judges strike down rules meant to protect us, ordinary people lose. The advocates I work with see these harsh impacts daily. The family that lost their home due to a fraudulent mortgage, the senior citizen scammed out of her life savings, the student defrauded and put into student loan debt for the rest of their life by a not-for-profit college. These aren't abstract legal questions. These are bread and butter issues. These are people's lives, and they're being sacrificed so billionaires can add another zero to their net worth. Everyone deserves equal justice under the law, which means no one can be above it. Not the corporations we sue, not the predators we prosecute, and certainly not the President of the United States. We must continue to fight in the courtrooms. We must zealously represent our clients. We must file cases to defend our rights. But we must also raise our voices, and all of us must refuse to accept that this is normal. We will stand together to fight for equal justice under the law for everyone. Thank you for being here. Let's win this together.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Keisha Barnard, a climate champion and the Assistant Director of Law Students for Climate Accountability.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Keisha with Law Students for Climate Accountability, a student-led organization building towards climate justice. The climate crisis fuels authoritarianism. Researchers have long noticed that natural disasters like floods, droughts, and wildfires can help autocratic politicians consolidate power. On the flip side, authoritarianism fuels the climate crisis. Trump has used his time in office to stop renewables and launch more oil and gas projects under the guise of an energy emergency. Boo. Militarism is one of the world's biggest contributors to ecological devastation. And this country's Department of War is a huge player in that. And a strong majority of Americans and people around the world favor climate action. However, the lack of urgent climate action in all 3 branches of government here is a sign that democracy has been weak for a long time and is on the verge of breaking. The legal profession is a powerful one and frequently anti-democratic. It prefers hierarchies and competition over equity and inclusion. In a time where diversity, equity, and inclusion are under attack, we can foster a different culture. A different culture is what we need to tackle the climate crisis. Members of the legal profession need to work in ways that are collaborative, thoughtful, and much more intentional. And we have to overcome individualism and the fear of making waves. By taking action today, we're taking a big step in the right direction, but we can't just stop here. Join Law Students for Climate Accountability. At LSCA, we are building a culture and a community to meet the moment. We're organizing a push to push the justice industry to actually center justice, and we're learning together how to take powerful collective action. Join us this Monday for a Global Day of Action, a 25-hour virtual event and letter writing campaign urging legal regulators like the American Bar Association and International Bar Association to lay out and define the ethical obligations that lawyers have concerning the climate crisis. Please go to ls4ca.org and click the banner at the top to RSVP. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we will hear from Steve Kennedy, the extraordinary organizing director of the People's Parity Project and truly an incredible champion of a pro-people legal system.
Thank you. I am so grateful to see all of you here today. As somebody who's been working to organize lawyers for the last several years, and I think this won't be a surprise to the lawyers here, this is not really typical for lawyers to step out in this way. We hold an incredible amount of power and influence within the courtroom, where we're trained to work and advance people's rights and protect the kind of authoritarianism that we're seeing now. But these aren't ordinary times. It's a very scary time right now. But when I look around at a group like this, particularly people who are maybe not as used to coming out and rallying in the streets, this gives me hope. And what I want you to leave with, after hearing from all these amazing speakers today, is to recognize not only that the work that you're doing in the courtrooms, in legislatures, and across your legal work, it's incredibly important. You not only need to be out there, you do need to be out here in the streets, whether it's supporting movements that are already existing, but also organizing among ourselves. This is meant to be not just a single event. This is the kickoff of something larger. If you look around the world at some of the most successful pushes back against governments that are falling into authoritarianism, strong lawyers movements have been a part of many of them. And if you look at the tremendous influence that they had, you look at a country like Poland, where you saw judges walking out of court in their robes to stand in the street with the people, it just has such an incredible impact, and you all have that same kind of influence. So we heard a lot about solidarity today. I'd say that we have to work on that among ourselves, see ourselves as parts of these movements, not only just there for support, but actually integrated there so we can all stand together as one people to push back against authoritarianism, against the Trump administration, and against the Supreme Court that continues to facilitate it. So thank you all so much for being here. And like I said, this is just the beginning. So if you want to get involved in more, there will be more. We are taking this nationwide. We will have events like this around the country. And if you want to learn more, go to peoplesparity.org/lawyersmarch. You can sign up for more information. You can sign up for other organizing opportunities with our partner organizations. Wherever you can find a way to get involved and use your power to advance our democracy, please do it. And we're trying to provide as many opportunities to do that as we can, whether it's here in DC, it's back in your hometowns, wherever you can find somebody, at least one other person who's willing to stand with you, we can work together. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Steve. And let's all give it up to Steve for organizing this today. Thank you. All right, next we'll hear from Tahir Duckett from Georgetown Law, who is fighting for a people-first criminal legal system. His work emphasizes the role of lawyers in advancing systemic change and equity. Come on up.
I know y'all thought y'all were about to go, so I'll be quick. Federal agents fire pepper balls at the heads of protesters. Agents driving vehicles into protesters. Greg Bavino, the commander-at-large of CBP, a position that, by the way, has no statutory basis, admits to lawyers that he's told his officers that they can arrest protesters for making, and I'm quoting, hyperbolic statements. If someone strays into a pepper ball, that's on them. Don't protest. The court fiddles while the First Amendment burns. The First Amendment, the very backbone of what we're doing here today and the starting point for our democracy. And as we know, this is just the start of all of the various ways in which this administration is engaged in consistent violations of the law. But to what end? You've all heard the cruelty is the point, and that's right. It is, but it's not the only point. When they said make America great again, we have to listen to the chill of what that means. They want permanence. It is not enough for them, and they will tell it to you, it is not enough for them to win a few victories and move on. They want permanent defeat of progress. And so how do they do that? They think that by being lawless, that it's an effective tactic to make you feel powerless. Are you powerless?
No!
They want you to feel hopeless. Are you hopeless?
No!
They want you to think that they are invincible. Are they invincible?
No!
They want you permanently on defense. And so what does that mean for us? As we fight these big battles that are focused on the future of our nation, the story of our republic, it also means that we have to do a second thing at the same time. And I'm sorry, because y'all have been asked to do a lot, right? It seems like it should be enough to fight for the very soul of our country, but at the same time, we have to find a way to build a nation that is more resilient to the authoritarian project of this court, of this Congress, and of that White House. And so I don't say this to shade the Biden administration, but building back better is not it. Not this time, y'all. The rot is too deep. Sophia said it. The old world is burning, right? And a lot of this rot runs deep within our ostensible colleagues on the left, those who are afraid of the accusations on the right. How long is it going to take for us to realize that every accusation is a confession? Can we not learn that from this week, if anything, that every accusation is a confession? So people make the mistake of thinking that our way back is to sacrifice the rights of some of us, right? That maybe if we're just a little transphobic, then folks will vote for us again. Just a little pregnant, that's right, right? That maybe if we sacrifice some of us, if we move to the center, that if we throw the most vulnerable among us under the bus, I have no patience for it. We have no quarter whatsoever for those of us who think that the way back to power is over the feet, is over the bodies of those of us who have stood next to us. The nation that we need to build, the one that we deserve, is the one that will actually sap them of their power. And that is what they're afraid of. That we'll actually get it right this time, not by sacrificing the rights of those of us, not by sacrificing the rights of our friends and our colleagues, but that we'll build the world that isn't just for billionaires, right? That we will materially improve the conditions of folks in cities, states, counties, rural areas across the country, that we will sap them from their power because we will make their lives better so they don't have to say, oh, I can throw immigrants under the bus, I can throw trans folks under the bus, I can throw black folks under the bus. The way that we sap them of their power is by actually getting back to work in our cities, in our states, and in our counties across the country. And that's the second project. So while we're doing all this incredible work for our republic, that we're still holding local officials accountable, that we're holding folks accountable, Democrats, Republicans, independents, that we're holding them all accountable to the world that we actually want to build. Can y'all do that? Can y'all do that? All right, let's go do it. Thank you.
All right. Finally, we will hear from Doug Lindner of the League of Conservation Voters and the Director of Democracy at the LCV.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here and for sticking with us. I promise we're almost at the end. I am Doug Lindner, and I am Senior Director of Judiciary and Democracy at the League of Conservation Voters. 10 years ago next month, something important happened in my life. I became a lawyer. I walked into a courthouse on Madison Square Park in New York. I raised my right hand, and I swore an oath to the United States Constitution. It was December 14th, 2015, and I remember that date because it meant something to me. But I'm not the only one who took an oath. Donald Trump took an oath to the Constitution. J.D. Vance took an oath to the Constitution. Pam Bondi took an oath to the Constitution. Mike Johnson, John Thune, and John Roberts all took oaths to the Constitution, and they all fucking lied. Because today, authoritarians rise in the land of the free and cowards rule in the home of the brave. Seriously, imagine being in the Capitol on January 6th and still voting to let him get away with it. How can we trust them to stand up for our freedoms if they won't even stand up for their own lives? Imagine being a Supreme Court justice and voting to let that insurrectionist act like a king. Imagine looking yourself in the mirror and knowing this is your legacy. President Donald Trump is purging and weaponizing our government, defying our laws, ignoring courts that refuse to do his bidding, and usurping the powers of Congress to create and destroy agencies, to raise and spend public funds, even to declare war. He is openly corrupt, openly hostile to free speech, and openly obsessed with covering up his ties to his best friend, Jeffrey Epstein. This regime represents everything generations of Americans fought and died to resist in the American Revolution, in the American Civil War, and yes, even in World War II. Our country's framers anticipated that a tyrant could one day become president, but they never envisioned that tyrant being actively supported by a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and a majority on the United States Supreme Court. And yet here we are. Much as I am outraged by their cowardice and complicity, I am so grateful to every single one of you for your courage and to the millions of Americans who stand with us in rejecting this authoritarian power grab. But it's not enough to save our country from these people. We have to save our planet from them too. Last year, during the election, Donald Trump sat down with big oil executives at Mar-a-Lago, and he offered them a deal. He said, "Raise $1 billion for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want." And he has. Trump is not just gutting Joe Biden's landmark environmental achievements. He's gutting the EPA. He's gutting DOJ environmental enforcement. He's opening pristine public lands to drilling, and he's doing everything within and beyond his legitimate power to destroy the clean energy industry. His goons at the Justice Department weaponized law enforcement against recipients of Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund grants, and then Senate Republicans let him put a top DOJ goon in a lifetime seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. The same goon who allegedly tried to purge 1-6 investigators and extort the mayor of New York. And of course, the 6 MAGA justices on our captured Supreme Court are on board with all of it. They support all of it. They are a part of all of it. Shame! Because they too serve the fossil fuel billionaires and authoritarians. Just in the last few years, the MAGA justices have invented fake constitutional law to limit the scope of climate action and make Americans breathe dirtier air. They've dramatically narrowed the scope of the Clean Water Act, rolling back half a century of protection for our wetlands, our streams, and our right to drink clean water that doesn't make us sick. Last year, they decided a trio of cases that massively shifted power from agencies like the EPA to the Supreme Court itself so they can use it to serve the polluters and authoritarians. But of course, that only applies when a Democrat is president, because Donald Trump gets to act like a king. Never mind what the voters want. The only votes that matter to the MAGA justices are 6-3 votes on this Supreme Court. And they're proving that too, constantly looking for new opportunities to roll back voting rights. Even now, they are considering striking down what's left of the bedrock Voting Rights Act, the most important civil rights law in the history of our country, after they've repeatedly attacked it for over a decade. As if flooding our politics with big oil money wasn't enough. And let us make no mistake, this era of MAGA authoritarianism will not end until we take back our Supreme Court from the MAGA majority that has stolen it. When the voting rights hero John Lewis passed 5 years ago, he left us with these words. He said, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act, and every generation must do its part." Friends, this generation is going to do our part. We are going to save our rights and our freedoms. We are going to save our democracy and our country, and together we're going to save the world. Thank you.
All right, for real this time. We are done, but thank you all so much for being here. Again, we want to see you out here again. We want to see people across the country, lawyers speaking out just like you are today. Do not leave this here, just at this event. Bring it back home with you. Talk to your colleagues. Get people involved, and let's make change. Okay.